The execution bells began before dawn. Though no one in the capital had slept, their iron voices rolled across the black roofs of Care Vale, through the narrow stone streets, over the frozen courtyards, and into the deepest chambers of the royal keep. Each strike carried the same message. The king's former Luna would die beneath the ashen crown before the sun reached its height. By the time Elowen Ashvale was led into the Court of Wolves, every balcony was crowded. Nobles in dark winter silks leaned forward behind carved railings. Pack commanders stood in rows beneath hanging banners, their silver clasps polished, their expressions hard. Priests of the Moon Temple gathered near the execution dais with white ash painted across their brows. Beyond the gates, thousands filled the outer square, waiting to hear the sentence carried through the speaking horn. Elowen walked barefoot between 6 royal guards. Black iron chains circled her wrists, throat, and waist. Runes had been carved into every link to weaken her wolf, though she had not shifted in nearly 7 years. Dried blood darkened the hem of her gray prison dress. Her hair, once worn beneath a Luna's silver crown, hung loose around a face made thin by 12 nights without sunlight. She did not lower her head. That was what unsettled them. The court had expected tears, confession, pleading, perhaps a final desperate claim that the evidence had been forged and that the dead soldiers found beneath the eastern tower had not been murdered by her hand. Instead, Elowen climbed the steps of the execution platform with the calm of a woman entering a place she had already visited in her dream. At the far end of the hall, Alpha King Ronan Vale sat beneath the ashen crown. The throne had been carved from the black heartwood of the first moon oak and bound with the fangs of conquered alphas. Ronan looked as though he belonged to it more than any king before him. He wore no ceremonial jewels, only black armor edged in worn silver and a heavy wolfskin mantle clasped at one shoulder. A thin scar cut through his right brow. His dark hair was swept back from a face too severe for softness, and his eyes held the cold gray of a winter sea. He had once promised Elowen that no one in his kingdom would ever place chains upon her. Now he watched those chains drag across his floor. The silence between them was more intimate than a kiss, and more brutal than a blade. 3 years had passed since Ronan rejected her before the royal council. 3 years since he had stood beneath the moon oak, his face unreadable, and declared their bond politically impossible. 3 years since he had stripped her of the Luna's crest, returned her ancestral lands to the crown, and ordered her from the chambers they had once shared. He had not chosen another woman that night. That had come later. Lady Seraphine Morcant stood beside the throne now, draped in deep crimson, one pale hand resting on the carved back of Ronan's seat. She had not yet been crowned Luna, but everyone in the kingdom understood what her position meant. Her family controlled the western grain roads, 4 border legions, and nearly half the silver mines beneath the Red Mountain. Without the Morcant alliance, Ronan's throne might survive 1 winter, perhaps 2. Seraphine's beauty was not delicate, it was precise. Her golden hair had been braided into a crown of its own. Her blue eyes revealed little. She looked at Elowen not with triumph, but with the measured attention of a woman watching a dangerous structure finally collapse. The High Chancellor stepped forward. "Lady Elowen Ashvale," he announced, his voice amplified by old court magic, last surviving heir of House Ashvale, formerly recognized as Luna Consort of the Crown Pack. "You stand accused of treason against the throne, conspiracy with the Iron Fang rebels, theft of royal war records, murder of 12 crown soldiers, and the practice of blood sorcery forbidden under the Third Moon Law." A murmur moved through the hall at the final charge. Elowen's gaze did not leave Ronan. Blood sorcery. That accusation had not been included in the sealed charges read to her beneath the prison. The Chancellor continued. "The evidence has been reviewed by the Royal Council and witnessed by commanders of the Eastern Guard. Letters bearing your ancestral seal were found in the rebel camp. The dead beneath the eastern tower carried wounds no ordinary weapon could make. A vessel containing blood-bound ash was discovered within your former estate." Elowen finally spoke. "My estate was seized 3 years ago." Her voice was low from disuse, but it carried through the hall. The Chancellor's mouth tightened. "The vessel was found in a chamber once belonging to you. A chamber occupied since then by crown agents, servants, quartermasters, and whatever thieves the council found useful. A few nobles shifted. Seraphine leaned slightly toward Ronan, though she did not whisper. Even now, she avoids the substance of the charges. Elowen turned her head. Seraphine met hargaze. There was no hatred in the noblewoman's face. That was what made her more dangerous. Hatred could be baited, pride could be wounded, jealousy could be exposed. Seraphine believed herself necessary. Necessary people committed the worst cruelties with the cleanest hand. The chancellor lifted a parchment. Do you deny corresponding with the Iron Fang rebels? I deny writing those letters. Do you deny visiting the Eastern Tower on the night of the murders? No. The court stirred. Ronan's fingers tightened against the arm of the throne. The chancellor took one step closer. Then you admit you were present. I went because I received a message bearing the king's private seal. At last, Ronan moved. Only slightly. A change in the angle of his shoulders. A narrowing of his eyes. What message? He asked. The sound of his voice struck her harder than the accusation. It was the first time he had spoken directly to her since her arrest. Elowen looked at him and remembered another night, years before, when that same voice had spoken her name against her skin as though it were a vow. She crushed the memory before it could show. The message warned that someone inside the palace intended to poison you during the Frost Council. Ronan's face gave nothing away, but something beneath his composure shifted. His wolf. Elowen felt it even through the iron runes. A faint, broken pulse beneath the king's skin, ragged and distant, like an animal breathing at the bottom of a frozen lake. Once, Ronan's wolf had filled every room he entered. Vale had been a vast black presence, ancient-blooded and dominant enough to force lesser wolves to lower their eyes. Now Elowen could barely sense him. That frightened her more than her own execution. The chancellor spoke again. No such message was recovered, because it was taken from me when the guards found the bodies, and the guards claim you were kneeling beside them with blood on your hands. One of them was still alive. A flash of memory cut through her, a young soldier choking on his own blood, the veins in his face turning black, his fingers clawing at her sleeve while shadows moved behind the door. I tried to save him, she said. With blood magic? Seraphine asked. The hall went still. Elowen felt the trap close. Ronan rose from the throne. The movement silenced even the whispering nobles. He descended the first step slowly, the wolfskin mantle shifting behind him. Answer her. Elowen looked at the man who had once known every secret she was willing to offer and none of the ones she had buried. No. It was not the truth. It was not entirely a lie. She had not used blood magic to kill the soldier. She had used it to pull the curse from his body. The curse had resisted, burrowing deeper, feeding on fear, and when the guards burst into the chamber, they found Elowen covered in blood beside 12 dead men. She had saved the king's life that night. No one knew. That had always been the nature of her power. It left no proof except the damage it did to her. Ronan stopped halfway down the steps. His gaze dropped to her left hand. Beneath the iron cuff, a dark stain spread along her vein. He saw it. Elowen curled her fingers. The chancellor faced the throne. Your Majesty, the council has ruled unanimously. House Ashvale was once spared despite its rebellion against your father. Mercy has been answered with treason. The law requires death. House Ashvale. There it was. Not merely her crime, but her blood. Elowen had been 9 years old when Ronan's father burned her family's fortress. She remembered ash falling like snow. She remembered her mother pushing her into a hidden passage while wolves screamed above them. By sunrise, every member of her bloodline had been declared a traitor. Elowen alone survived. The old king had not killed her. He had brought her to court as a royal ward, a living warning to other fallen houses. She grew up among people who spoke kindly to her in public and counted the knives after she left a room. Ronan had been the only one who treated her as though she were not the remainder of someone else's war, until he became king, until the council demanded he sever their bond, until he chose the kingdom over her. The High Chancellor raised the execution order. Alpha King Ronan Vale, do you confirm the judgment of the court? Ronan looked at Elowen. For one impossible moment, the hall disappeared. There was only the bond between them, buried but not dead. A torn silver thread stretching through rejection, silence, anger, and the years neither of them had survived cleanly. Elowen felt his wolf stir again, weak, in pain, dying. Ronan's jaw tightened. "I confirm it." The words passed through her without sound. The court exhaled as one creature. Something inside Elowen went still, not broken. That had happened 3 years before. This was different. This was the quiet after the last hope had been removed. The execution priest approached with a bowl of white ash. He pressed 2 fingers to Elowen's brow and marked her with the symbol of the severed moon. "May your wolf return to the night from which it came." Elowen nearly laughed. Her wolf had never returned from anywhere, not since the fall of Ashvale, not since the night her mother taught her the first law of forbidden blood. Power taken from death always demands a living vessel. The guards positioned her before the black stone block. She lowered herself without resistance. A roar rose from the outer square as the executioner stepped onto the dais. He wore a horned mask and carried a crescent blade wide enough to sever the neck of a shifted wolf. Ancient runes gleamed along its edge. Elowen placed her hands against the stone. The chains pulled tight. Across the hall, Ronan remained standing. Seraphine watched him now rather than Elowen. That, more than anything, revealed the truth. She was measuring his grief. Elowen closed her eyes. She thought of the old moon garden where Ronan had once found her feeding a wounded raven beneath the snow. She thought of the scar on his palm from the day he cut himself, opening a gate for her, because court servants had been ordered not to touch the traitor's child. She thought of the way he had looked at her before his coronation, when he still believed a king could choose the woman he loved and keep his kingdom too. The executioner lifted the blade. Then every wolf in the hall began to growl. It started low, a vibration beneath the floor. One by one, noblemen stiffened as their wolves pressed toward the surface. Guards turned toward the western archway. The Moon Temple priests raised their heads. Ronan's eyes flashed silver. The torches along the walls went out. Darkness swallowed the court. A scream broke from the upper gallery. Then another. The great western windows exploded inward. Black feathered bolts tore through the air. The first struck a royal guard in the throat. The second buried itself in the chancellor's shoulder. Figures in ash-gray cloaks dropped from the shattered gallery, curved blades already drawn. "Protect the king." Chaos erupted. The executioner turned toward the attackers. Elowen remained chained to the stone. Wolves shifted between heartbeats. Armor split. Nobles fled toward the side passages as royal guards collided with the assassins beneath the dead chandeliers. Ronan moved like violence given human shape. He descended from the throne and caught the first assassin by the wrist, breaking the man's arm before driving him into the stone. His claws flashed through another attacker's chest. Silver burned in his eyes, but his wolf's power faltered almost as soon as it appeared. Elowen felt the weakness ripple through him. Ronan staggered. Only once. No one else noticed. She did. From the shadow behind the throne, a hooded figure rose. This assassin had not entered through the windows. He had been inside the court all along. A black blade formed in his hand. Not steel but condensed shadow, its surface pulsing with veins of violet light. Ancient curse symbols twisted around the hilt. Elowen's blood turned cold. She knew that weapon, a kingspan blade. It did not kill the body first. It poisoned the wolf, severed the bloodline, and left the victim alive long enough to feel the kingdom reject him. Ronan turned too late. The assassin threw the blade. It crossed the hall without sound, straight toward the king's heart. Elowen did not think. She pulled against the chain. The iron runes flared white and burned through her skin. The execution guards shouted. The stone beneath her hands cracked. The blade flew closer. Ronan saw it. His wolf tried to rise. Nothing answered. Elowen opened the place inside herself. She had kept sealed since childhood. Pain flooded her vein, not heat. Hunger. The chains shattered. The sound split the court like thunder. Elowen rose from the execution block and stepped between the king and the blade. She lifted both hands. The king's bane stopped in the air. A breath from her chest. Black light crawled across its edge. The curse screamed not in sound, but inside every living mind in the hall. Wolves collapsed. Men clutched their skulls. The remaining torches burst into red flame. Blood ran from Elowen's wrists. It did not fall. It rose. Crimson thread spiraled around her arms, wrapping the black blade, forcing it backward inch by inch. The assassin stared from beneath his hood. "No," he whispered. Elowen's eyes opened. They were no longer brown. They burned a deep, unnatural red. The forbidden magic entered her. The curse leapt from the blade into her palms, raced beneath her skin, and blackened every vein along her arm. She cried out but did not move. Behind her, Ronan caught her shoulders. The moment his hands touched her, the severed mate bond ignited. Silver fire tore through the hall. Ronan froze. Elowen felt his dying wolf, not as a distant pulse now. She saw him. Vale lay chained in darkness, his enormous black body covered in spreading veins of the same curse. His breathing was shallow. One silver eye opened and fixed on her, not dead, poison. For years, the blade in front of her dissolved into smoke. The curse entered her completely. Elowen collapsed against Ronan. He caught her before she struck the floor. For the first time since condemning her, the Alpha King's control broke in front of his entire court. Elowen. Her name left him like a wound. She looked up at him, trembling as black veins climbed her throat. Around them, fighting slow, the surviving assassins were dragged down by royal wolves. Nobles stared from behind overturned benches. Priests of the Moon Temple stood pale and silent. Seraphine had not moved from beside the throne. Only her hand had changed. Her fingers were clenched so tightly around the carved wood that one polished nail had split. Elowen saw it. Then the curse reached her heart. Her body arched in Ronan's arm. Blood-red magic exploded outward. Every window in the Court of Wolves shattered. The ancient Ashvale crest, erased from every banner and history book in the kingdom, burned to life beneath Elowen's body, a crowned wolf encircled by thorn. The symbol glowed across the black floor, vast and impossible. All around the hall, old bloodlines recognized it. The Moon Temple priests dropped to their knees. The High Chancellor went white, and somewhere beneath the palace, sealed behind 7 walls since the fall of House Ashvale, something ancient opened its eyes. Elowen heard its voice inside her blood. At last. Then darkness took her. Elowen woke to the sound of a wolf trying not to die. The breathing came from somewhere beyond the walls, low and ragged, each inhale dragging through darkness as though the beast had been buried beneath stone. She opened her eyes and saw a ceiling ribbed with black beams, silver warding symbols glowing faintly between them. Heavy curtains sealed the windows. The air smelled of bitter herbs, cold iron, and blood that had been washed from the floor but not entirely erased. Her wrists were bandaged, her throat burned. When she tried to move, pain tightened around her ribs like a fist. "You should remain still." The voice came from the shadows beside the hearth. Ronan sat in a high-backed chair with his elbows resting on his knees. His armor was gone. He wore a dark linen shirt open at the throat, the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Dried blood marked one cuff. He looked as though he had not moved in hours. The Alpha King had always carried exhaustion well. It sharpened him, made him seem more dangerous. This was different. His face had gone pale beneath the scar across his brow. Silver flickered weakly through his eyes and vanished. There was something unsettled in the way he watched her, not suspicion alone, but the fear of a man who had seen the shape of his own death reflected inside another person. Elowen pushed herself upright despite his warning. The room tilted. Ronan rose instantly. He crossed the distance between them and caught her before she could fall, one hand closing around her shoulder, the other bracing her waist. The moment he touched her, the torn mate bond stirred. A pulse of heat traveled from his palm into her body. Then came the pain, not hers, his. A black chain around a vast wolf's heart, poison spreading through silver veins, claws dragging weakly against the floor of an endless inner prison. Elowen gasped and shoved him away. Ronan stepped back as though struck. For several breaths, neither spoke. "You saw him," he said. Elowen pressed one hand against her chest. Vale. The name changed something in his expression. No one had spoken his wolf's name publicly in years. Ronan turned toward the hearth. "What did you do to me in the court?" "I saved your life." "That was not what I asked. You touched me while I was drawing the curse into my body. The bond opened. The bond was severed." "Rejected," she corrected. "Not severed." His shoulders hardened. Elowen knew immediately that the distinction mattered to him. A rejected bond could be buried, starved, scarred until both wolves stopped calling across it. But it remained. The king looked back at her. "Why did you never tell me? About my magic? About the curse inside my wolf?" She stared at him. "You knew," he said. It was not a question. Elowen looked down at the bandages around her wrists. Beneath the linen, black veins still threaded across her skin, though they no longer climbed toward her heart. "I suspected something was wrong after your coronation," she said. "Your scent changed, your temper sharpened. Vale stopped answering mine beneath the moon, and you said nothing." "I tried." Ronan's expression darkened. "3 times," she continued. "The first time, your council refused me entry to the war chamber. The second time, your healer told me I was imagining weakness because our bond had become unstable. The third time was the night you rejected me." His jaw flexed. The fire cracked between them. "You stood before the moon oak," Elowen said, "and told the court that House Ashvale could never stand beside the crown. You returned my lands. You stripped me of my place. When I tried to warn you afterward, your guards escorted me from the palace. I gave no order to keep you from me. You gave enough orders that others understood what you wanted." His face tightened, but he did not deny it. Elowen looked toward the sealed curtains. "How long was I unconscious?" 2 days. "And the assassins?" 6 dead, 4 captured. 2 took poison before questioning. The one who threw the blade? Dead. "Convenient." Ronan's eyes sharpened. "You think I had him killed?" "I think someone inside this palace is very practiced at making dead men impossible to question." He moved closer, though he did not touch her again. "The court believes you summoned the assassins." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Of course they do. They claim the attack created the perfect moment for you to reveal forbidden magic and bind yourself to the throne. I was chained beneath an execution blade. They say you knew the chains would not hold you. Then why did I wait until a weapon was flying toward your heart?" Ronan said nothing. The answer stood between them. She had not escaped to save herself. She had escaped to save him. That truth seemed to anger him more than any accusation could have. A knock sounded at the door. Ronan's expression closed. "Enter." The royal healer stepped inside carrying a silver tray. Master Halric was a thin man with white hair braided at his neck and hands stained permanently green from decades of grinding herbs. He stopped when he saw Elowen sitting upright. "Your Majesty, she should not be awake." "She is," Ronan said. Halric placed the tray on a side table. Small glass vessels clinked. "The curse should have killed her before sunset on the first day." Elowen studied him. "You sound disappointed." The healer's gaze flicked toward the king. "I sound cautious." He approached the bed and reached for her wrist. Elowen pulled away. Halric paused. "Show me your hands." "No. If the curse has reached your heart, it has not. You cannot know that. I can feel it." The healer's mouth thinned. "Blood witches always believe they understand what moves inside them." The words settled coldly over the room. Ronan turned his head. "You knew what she was." Halric went still, only for a heartbeat. It was enough. Elowen felt the king's anger rise before it showed. The room seemed to contract around him. Silver flashed more strongly through his eye. Halric bowed his head. "I knew what House Ashvale was accused of practicing. That was not my question." The healer looked at Elowen, then back at Ronan. "There were records, sealed beneath the old infirmary. Your father ordered them destroyed after the Ashvale rebellion. Were they?" "No." Ronan's voice dropped. "You lied to me. I protected the crown." "From what?" Halric's gaze settled on Elowen. "From her blood." The silence that followed was absolute. Elowen felt something old and weary move through her. She had known all her life that the court feared her family. She had never known exactly why. "What did the records say?" she asked. Halric did not answer her. Ronan stepped between them. It was a subtle movement, but unmistakable. Protective. The healer noticed. So did Elowen. Ronan's voice became colder. "Answer her." Halric drew a breath. House Ashvale did not merely practice blood sorcery. They were created by it. Elowen stared at him. "The first Ashvale queen," he continued, "served the moon crown before the Vale kings took the throne. When the plague of shadow fever swept through the northern packs, she discovered a way to draw corruption from wolves and bind it into her own blood. Her descendants inherited that ability." "That is not creation," Elowen said. "That is inheritance." It became more than inheritance. Each generation absorbed curses, poisons, and corrupted magic from the royal line. Over centuries, Ashvale blood changed. It became a living vessel. "For the crown," Ronan said quietly, Halric nodded. Elowen looked between them. My family served yours. The healer's face showed no remorse. Your family became powerful enough to threaten every throne it protected, so your king burned them. Your father rebelled. My father discovered something. Halric's gaze shifted. Elowen saw it. What did he discover? The healer remained silent. Ronan moved toward him. You will answer. Halric's loyalty finally cracked beneath fear. He discovered that the curse killing your wolf was not ancient. Ronan stopped. Elowen felt the air leave her lungs. What do you mean? She asked. The curse did not awaken naturally after the coronation, Halric said. It was placed. Ronan's face became unreadable. By whom? He asked. Halric lowered his eyes. Your father believed House Ashvale had done it, and did they? No. The word fell like a stone. Elowen's hands clenched in the blankets. All those years, all those dead, all those names erased from history beneath an accusation the royal healer knew was false. My family was slaughtered for a curse they did not cast. Halric said nothing. She looked at Ronan. He seemed carved from the same black wood as his throne. Who cast it? Ronan asked. The records never named the hand responsible, only the method. The curse was designed to pass through the coronation blood rite. It would remain dormant until a Vale heir wore the ashen crown, then slowly poison his wolf. Why? To weaken the royal bloodline without creating a martyr. A king who dies by assassination unites his kingdom. A king who loses his wolf invites rebellion. Ronan turned toward the fire. Elowen watched him understand the full shape of it. The worsening rages, the fading strength, the growing distance between him and Vale, the council's constant pressure to secure an alliance, produce an heir, bind the throne to House Morcant before the kingdom sensed weakness. Someone had not merely cursed him. Someone had built a political future around his decline. A new knock struck the door, harder this time. Ronan did not answer. The door opened anyway. Commander Tareth entered with 2 guards behind him. He was broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, and wore the black cloak of the royal army. Elowen remembered him from childhood as one of the men who rode beneath Ronan's father during the fall of Ashvale. He looked at her with the same expression he had worn when she was 9. Not hatred, assessment. Your Majesty, Tareth said, the council has assembled. The city is restless. Rumors have spread that the former Luna survived Kingsbane and awakened the Ashvale crest beneath the throne. They are not rumors, Ronan said. The commander's mouth tightened. Then they are worse. Ronan faced him fully. Explain. The northern delegates are demanding she be surrendered to the Moon Temple. The western houses insist the execution must be completed before sunset. 3 lesser alphas have already withdrawn their oath guards from the palace. Because a woman did not die when they expected? Because forbidden blood magic erupted beneath the ashen crown? Elowen watched Ronan's expression harden. Tareth continued. Lady Seraphine has kept the Morcant legions inside the Western District, but her father warns that he cannot restrain them if the court believes the king is under a witch's influence. There it was, not a threat, a reminder. The Morcant family controlled enough steel to decide whether the capital remained peaceful. Ronan glanced at Elowen. Where is Lady Seraphine now? In the council chamber. Of course she is. The commander lowered his voice. Your Majesty, you must appear before them. If you remain here, they will conclude she has already compromised you. Ronan's eyes became dangerous. Do you believe that? Tareth hesitated. The king took 1 step closer. Choose your answer carefully. I believe, the commander said, that you condemned her before the entire kingdom, and hours later she revealed a power your law defines as treason. If you reverse yourself now, every enemy you possess will claim the crown no longer rules you. Elowen looked away. The words struck because they were true. Ronan's throne rested on obedience, fear, and the appearance that his judgments could not be moved by private feeling. Saving her would not be mercy alone. It would be an admission that the king had condemned an innocent woman. Kings survive cruelty more easily than public error. Ronan turned to Halric. No one touches her. The healer bowed stiffly. Tareth, place royal guards at every entrance. The commander stared at him. You intend to keep her here. I intend to uncover who placed a Kingsbane assassin inside my court. And if the council orders her surrender, Ronan's wolf flashed through his eyes. Weak, but furious. "The council advises," he said. "It does not order." Tareth bowed, though reluctance stiffened every line of his body. When he left, the doors closed with a heavy finality. Elowen studied Ronan. "You should go." His gaze remained on the door. "You heard what he said." "I heard exactly what he said. And still you think I should leave you unguarded? I think you should protect your throne." His head turned. She forced herself to meet his eye. "You already chose it once," she said. "Do not pretend the choice has changed because I stopped a blade." Something raw moved through his face and vanished. "You believe that was all it was? What else should I believe? That I spent 2 nights beside this bed because I thought you would stop breathing." The words came out harsher than tenderness, almost accusatory. Elowen felt them anyway. Ronan stepped closer. "I watched the curse move beneath your skin," he said. "Every healer told me you should be dead. Every priest refused to enter the room. Vale has not spoken to me in 3 years, but when you collapsed, he tried to tear through the curse to reach you." Her heartbeat changed. Ronan heard it. His eyes darkened. "I condemned you," he said, quieter now. "I know what I did." "Do you?" "Yes." "Then say why." He looked at her for a long moment. This was the question he had avoided for 3 years. In council chambers, on battlements, in every silent passage where they had nearly crossed paths and chosen distance instead. Why had he rejected her? Politics was not the whole answer. She had always known that. Ronan turned away. "The night before the bond ceremony," he said, "my father's sealed oracle was open." Elowen waited. "It contained a prophecy recorded at my birth." The firelight moved across his face. "What prophecy?" "That the last daughter of Ashvale would stand beneath the ashen crown with my blood on her hands. That if I bound myself to her, my wolf would fall, my throne would break, and the kingdom would burn around us." Elowen could not speak. Ronan's voice remained controlled, but the strain beneath it had become visible. "I believe the curse inside Vale was the beginning. Every time I touched you, his pain worsened. Every night our bond deepened. I heard him dying. I thought the prophecy was warning me that loving you would destroy everything I had sworn to protect, so you rejected me. I thought distance would save us both." A quiet, broken sound almost escaped her. "You let me believe my blood had made me unworthy. I could not reveal the prophecy without condemning you as a threat to the crown. You condemned me anyway." "Yes." The honesty wounded more than an excuse would have. Ronan looked at her. "I have carried that answer every day since." Elowen's throat tightened. "And now? Now I know the curse was placed before I ever touched you. Knowing the prophecy may have been manipulated does not erase what you did. I know. You do not get to stand beside my bed and turn regret into devotion. I know." She hated him for saying it without defense. She hated herself more for seeing how tired he was. The torn bond stirred again, carrying a flicker of Vale's pain between them. Elowen closed her eyes. Somewhere beyond the chamber, bells began ringing through the palace. Not execution bell, alarm bells. Ronan crossed to the door. A guard burst inside before he reached it, blood running down one side of his face. "Your Majesty, the lower ward has been breached." Ronan's hand went to the sword at his hip. "By whom?" "Moon Temple soldiers. They entered through the eastern gate under authority of the High Priestess. They claim the Blood Witch must be purified before the second sunset." Elowen swung her legs from the bed. Ronan turned sharply. "No, they are coming for me. You can barely stand. I stood well enough when the blade came for you." His expression darkened, but she was already tearing the blankets aside. The black veins beneath her bandages pulsed. At the same moment, a scream echoed from the corridor. Then another. The silver wards across the ceiling flickered. Halric backed toward the wall. Ronan drew his sword. The chamber doors shuddered beneath a heavy impact. A woman's voice rang from the other side, amplified by temple magic. "By decree of the old moon, surrender the Ashvale vessel. The curse she carries cannot be allowed to return to the royal blood." Elowen froze. "Return. Not enter. Return." She looked at Halric. The healer had gone pale. Ronan saw it too. "What does she mean?" he demanded. Halric shook his head. "Your Majesty." The doors shook again. One hinge split. Elowen stepped toward him. "The curse inside Ronan came from my bloodline." "No, not from us," she said, the truth forming even as she spoke. "Through us." Halric said nothing. She saw the answer in his silence. House Ashvale had spent generations drawing corruption from the Vale King, but power taken from death always demanded a living vessel. Her family had not created the royal curse. They had contained it, until someone murdered them, until the vessel was broken, until the poison had nowhere left to go except back into the crown. The doors cracked inward. Moon Temple soldiers appeared through the splintered gap, their white armor marked with red ash. Behind them stood High Priestess Mavra, her face hidden beneath a silver veil. In one hand she carried a crescent staff, in the other, a narrow glass vial filled with black blood. Elowen recognized the scent before the stopper was removed. Ashvale blood. Old. Preserved. Her mother's. The priestess lifted the vial. Ronan's wolf convulsed inside him. He dropped to one knee. "Elowen," he gasped. The black veins beneath her own skin ignited. High Priestess Mavra smiled behind the veil. "The king was never meant to survive the second awakening," she said. "And neither were you." Then she shattered the vial against the floor. The vial struck the stone and burst into a spray of black glass. For one suspended heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Elowen's mother's blood touched the floor. The chamber convulsed. Every silver ward carved across the ceiling flared crimson. The fire collapsed inward as though dragged into a deeper darkness. A pulse of power tore through the stones beneath Elowen's feet, raced up the walls, and slammed into her chest with the force of a charging wolf. She fell to one knee. Across the room, Ronan made no sound at all. That frightened her more than a scream. His sword slipped from his hand and struck the floor. His body folded forward, one palm braced against the stone, the other clawing at his heart. Black veins spread beneath his throat in branching lines. The silver in his eyes vanished. Inside the broken bond, Vale roared. The sound ripped through Elowen's mind. Not weak now, terrified. The black chains around the great wolf's body had awakened. They tightened around his ribs, sank into his flesh, and dragged him deeper into the darkness where the curse had imprisoned him for years. Elowen reached for Ronan. A wave of blood magic threw her backward. She hit the side of the bed hard enough to crack the wooden frame. Moon Temple soldiers surged through the broken doors. Ronan's royal guards met them in the threshold. Steel struck white armor. Wolves snarled beneath human skin. One guard shifted halfway, claws bursting from his hands as he drove a temple soldier into the wall. Another fell with a crescent spear through his side. High Priestess Maevra entered without haste. Her silver veil moved softly with each step. The crescent staff in her hand glowed with pale fire, but the blood spreading across the floor belonged to an older darkness. It crawled through the cracks between stones in thin black streams, all of them reaching toward Ronan. "Stop this," Elowen said. The priestess tilted her head. "You ask as though I began it. You brought my mother's blood into this room. I brought home what was stolen from the temple." Elowen forced herself upright. "My mother was not yours. No. She belonged to the throne, as every Ashvale vessel did." Rage came so quickly, Elowen nearly mistook it for power. The priestess saw it and smiled beneath the veil. "There," Mavra murmured. "That is the inheritance they tried to bury." Ronan dragged in a broken breath. Elowen looked at him. His fingers had gouged into the stone floor. Blood ran beneath his nails. He was fighting the curse with nothing but will, and he was losing. She moved toward him again. Maevra struck the butt of her staff against the floor. A ring of pale fire rose between Elowen and the king. "You cannot draw it from him this time," the priestess said. "Not while your mother's blood calls the curse back to its source." Elowen stared at the black streams spreading across the room. They were not flowing toward Ronan because he was their victim. They were flowing through him. Toward her, the curse recognized Ashvale blood. It wanted a vessel. Her mother's preserved blood had become a bridge between Ronan's poisoned wolf and the last living daughter of the line that had contained the corruption for centuries. "You did this before," Elowen said. Maevra's veil shifted. "The night my family died, the temple opened the vessel." Master Halric stood rigid against the wall. His silence confirmed it. Elowen looked at him. "You knew." The healer's face crumpled beneath the weight of 20 years. "Not until afterward. You knew enough to keep the records hidden." "I was ordered. My mother's blood has been preserved beneath your temple since the massacre, and you were ordered?" Halric lowered his eyes. The priestess spared him a glance. The healer has always lacked the courage required for true loyalty. That is why men like him survive the reigns of better people. Ronan tried to rise. His arm gave way. The bond flashed open again. Elowen saw Vale's body arch beneath the chains. His black fur was coming away in strips of shadow. The curse had reached his heart. She stepped into the pale fire. Pain climbed her legs. The flames were not ordinary heat. They burned through memory. Her father's voice vanished first. She heard him laughing in the courtyard of Ashvale Keep. Then the sound dissolved as if swallowed by snow. Her brother's face blurred. The scent of her mother's hair disappeared. Elowen stopped. Maevra watched her from the other side of the flames. Temple fire purifies attachment. Cross it, and you may reach him. But each step will strip away one piece of the life you believe makes you human. Ronan lifted his head. Elowen, he said, the word barely more than breath. Do not. She looked at him. 3 years of silence stood between them. 3 years of anger, abandonment, and the wound of his public rejection. He had condemned her beneath the eyes of the kingdom. He had confirmed her death with his own voice. Yet even now, half consumed by the curse, he was trying to protect what remained of her. Elowen took another step. The fire climbed to her waist. She forgot the old moon garden. Not that it existed, but how it felt beneath winter light. She knew she had once been happy there. She could no longer remember why. Ronan growled through clenched teeth. Stop. Another step. She forgot the first time he had kissed her. The loss struck not as emptiness but as a sudden tearing. A door ripped from its hinges inside her. She remembered that he had kissed her. She remembered the rain. She remembered his hands trembling. His face in that moment was gone. Elowen nearly fell. Maevra's voice softened. You see now, blood witches call their sacrifice noble because they never count the lives erased inside them. Elowen forced herself forward. I count everyone. The fire rose around her throat. She remembered standing before Ronan beneath the moon oak while he rejected her. Then that memory began to burn. His expression disappeared first. The shape of the crowd faded. His words became distant. No. She stopped again, horrified. That wound had defined every year since. Without it, would she still know why she feared him? Why she resisted him? Why her heart broke whenever he looked at her with regret? Ronan felt the loss through the bond. His eyes found hers. Hold on to it, he said. The curse shook his body. Hold on to what I did. Elowen stared at him through the pale flame. Ronan dragged himself upright against the bedpost. Do not forgive me because the memory is taken from you. The words anchored her. She held his rejection not as an image, but as truth. He had chosen fear. He had wounded her. He had loved her badly. The temple fire could burn the scene, but not the meaning she had carved from it. Elowen stepped through. The flames collapsed behind her. She reached Ronan and took his face between her hands. The curse struck. Black light exploded beneath their skin. Ronan's back arched. Elowen screamed as the poison bond opened from both sides. The chamber vanished, replaced by the inner darkness where Vael lay chained. This time Elowen entered it fully. She stood barefoot upon a field of black water beneath a moonless sky. Every step sent red ripples outward. Vael lay ahead of her, enormous and broken, his body wrapped in iron chains covered in old temple symbols. Ronan stood beside the wolf. Not the king as the court knew him. A younger Ronan, bareheaded, blood on his face, wearing the black ceremonial robes from the night of his coronation. He stared at Elowen as though she were a ghost. You should not be here. Neither should you. This is where the curse keeps me. No, this is where you keep yourself. His face hardened. You know nothing of it. She walked closer. The black water deepened around her ankles. I know you have been standing beside your dying wolf for years while pretending no one could see him. Ronan looked toward Vael. One of the chains tightened. The wolf shuddered. Every time I tried to break them, Ronan said, someone died. Elowen stopped. What? The water around them changed. Images rose across its surface. A guard collapsing in the throne room after Ronan lost control during his first winter as king. A servant thrown against a wall by an invisible force. 2 counselors bleeding from the nose while Vael's roar shook the palace foundations. Ronan's hidden wound was not merely that his wolf was dying. The curse had made Vael dangerous. Every attempt to free him released the poison into those nearby. I rejected you after the oracle was opened, Ronan said. But that was not the only reason. Elowen looked at him. The night before the ceremony, Vale tried to reach your wolf through the bond. The curse followed him. You stopped breathing in my arms. A fragment of memory moved inside her. Darkness. Ronan shouting her name. Blood beneath her nose. She had believed it a fainting spell brought on by exhaustion. I thought binding you to me would kill you, he said. And I knew if I told you, you would stay. You decided for me. Yes. You humiliated me to make certain I would leave. Yes. The answer came without defense. Elowen's anger rose, hot and clean. You let the whole court believe I had clung to a king who did not want me. I wanted you enough to become cruel. That is not love. No. His eyes met hers. It was fear wearing love's face. The black water trembled. Vale opened one silver eye. Elowen approached the first chain. Temple symbols pulsed across it. But beneath them, she saw something else. Tiny marks, shaped like thorn. Ashvale runes. Her family had not forged the chain. They had altered them, contained them. Each generation had added another layer, holding the curse within the royal line without allowing it to spread. When the last Ashvale vessels died, the containment began to fail. Elowen touched the iron. 1,000 voices entered her blood. Her ancestors. Not words. Pain. Women kneeling beside poisoned kings. Mothers drawing madness from infants born beneath cursed moons. Daughters cutting their palms over dying wolves and carrying the corruption into their own heart. They had not been royal servants. They had been sacrifices hidden beneath the language of duty. Elowen pulled her hand away. I cannot free him, she said. Ronan's face went still. The chains are the only thing keeping the curse from consuming everyone bound to the crown. Then leave them. Vile vil dit. I know. The simplicity of his answer broke something open inside her. He moved toward the wolf and placed one hand against Vale's head. If the choice is his life or yours, there is no choice. Vale growled weakly. Ronan closed his eyes. Forgive me. Elowen watched the king prepare to lose the oldest part of himself. Not for the throne. For here. The power between them shifted. For years, she had believed Ronan valued crown, bloodline, and kingdom above anything they had shared. Now, in the one place he could not lie, he was willing to let his wolf die rather than turn her into another Ashvale vessel. She knelt beside the chain. There may be another way. Ronan opened his eyes. The curse travels through bonds, she said. That is how it entered the royal line during the coronation rite. That is how it reached me through you. That is how the temple has controlled it. You said drawing it into yourself would kill you. It would. Then there is no other way. I did not say I would draw it into myself. Elowen looked toward the darkness beyond Vale. Something moved there. Not a wolf. A mass of shadow wearing many human faces. Kings, priests, warriors. All the generations through which the curse had passed. The corruption was not a creature, but it had learned hunger. It had fed on royal fear, on domination, on every betrayal committed in the name of preserving power. It had become almost a lie. Curses need a vessel, Elowen said. But they also need a purpose. Ronan followed her gaze. What purpose? To keep the Vale throne dependent on those who know how to contain it. The truth settled between them. The Moon Temple had not merely preserved the curse. It had shaped the kingdom around it. Every king required temple rites. Every heir needed priestly blessing. Every unexplained weakness gave the old priesthood greater control. House Ashvale had been the only bloodline capable of breaking that dependence. So they had been destroyed, not because they threatened the crown, because they threatened the temple. Elowen gripped the chain. We do not need to absorb the curse, she said. We need to reveal where it is anchored. Ronan knelt beside her. And then, we cut it out. With what? Elowen looked at the scar across his palm. The scar he had received opening a gate for a frightened trader's daughter when they were children. Royal blood freely given, she said. Ashvale blood freely refused. He understood. The old rites depended on forced sacrifice. Kings took. Vessels endured. The curse survived because every generation repeated the same wound. To break it, the pattern had to reverse. Ronan drew a claw across his palm. Blood welled instantly. Elowen caught his wrist. Once we begin, it will know what we are doing. Then do not give it time to think. Despite everything, the words carried the shadow of the man she had once loved. Not humor, Defiance. She cut her own palm against the chain. Their blood touched. The world screamed. In the chamber beyond the vision, every window burst inward. High Priestess Maevra staggered as the crescent staff cracked from top to bottom. The black streams on the floor reversed direction. Temple soldiers collapsed, clutching the marks beneath their armor as the curse tore through the sacred network binding them to the priesthood. Inside the darkness, the shadow behind veil surged forward. Faces opened across its surface. Ronan's father, Elowen's father, kings whose names had become statue, women whose names had been erased. The corruption spoke through all of them. The crown survives because someone bleeds beneath it. Elowen tightened her grip on Ronan's hand. No crown that requires this deserves to survive. The shadow struck. Vile Rose. The great wolf moved with impossible speed despite the chains. He threw himself between them in the darkness. The impact drove him into the black water, but one chain snapped. Ronan cried out. The curse poured from the broken link into him. Elowen reached for it, then stopped. Every instinct in her blood screamed to absorb the poison, to become the vessel, to repeat what her mothers had done for centuries. She closed her hand, refused. The curse recoiled as though confused. Ronan looked at her through silver-black eyes. Now, together, they pressed their bleeding palms against the largest chain. Ronan gave his blood without command. Elowen offered none of her body as prison. Instead, she gave the curse a path back through the bond that had created it. The iron split. Light erupted from Veil's chest. Not silver, red and gold, threaded together. The darkness peeled away from the wolf in shrieking layers. Each face trapped within the shadow appeared for a heartbeat, then vanished into ash. The black water beneath them boiled. In the physical chamber, Ronan and Elowen were lifted from the floor by the force of the released magic. Maevra raised both hands. No. The priestess tore away her veil. Her face was younger than Elowen expected. Not ancient, not monstrous. A woman perhaps 15 years older than Ronan, with gray eyes and a pale scar running from her temple to her jaw. Fear transformed her. You do not understand what you are breaking, Maevra shouted. The northern packs will tear each other apart without the crown rights. The alphas will challenge him. The bloodline oaths will fail. Then they were never oaths, Elowen gasped. They were chains. Maevra's expression hardened. Order is built from chains. The priestess lifted one hand. Every moon temple soldier in the chamber convulsed. Their eyes turned white. The old moon marks beneath their armor opened like wounds, and power flowed from their bodies into Maevra. Some collapsed immediately. Others screamed as their strength was taken. She had called them loyal servants. They were vessels too. Elowen saw the truth of Maevra's motive then. The priestess did not seek chaos. She feared it. She had spent her life watching kingdoms fall when weak rulers lost control of stronger alphas. She believed the curse and the rites were cruel necessities, hidden structures that prevented endless war. To her, House Ashvale had endangered millions by threatening the system. To her, Seraphine's political marriage and Ronan's weakening wolf were not crimes. They were manageable costs. Maevra drew the stolen power into her staff. A blade of white fire formed above it. She aimed at Elowen. Ronan moved first. He stepped between them. The white fire struck his chest. His body jerked. For one heartbeat, the king remained standing. Then blood spread across his shirt. Elowen screamed his name. The inner world shattered. She returned to the chamber on her knees, Ronan collapsing against her. The bond flared wide enough for her to feel the wound tear through him. Maevra stared at the king in disbelief. You protected her. Ronan's breath came shallow. She protected me first. He raised one blood-covered hand. The palace answered its king. Stone wolves carved into the chamber walls opened their eyes. A deep roar rolled through the keep. Old royal wards, dormant since Ronan's coronation, awakened beneath the floors. The surviving temple soldiers were thrown backward. Maevra's broken staff flew from her grasp, but Ronan had spent too much strength. His head dropped against Elowen's shoulder. The wound in his chest glowed white. Temple fire. It was consuming his heart from the outside, while the King's Bane curse consumed his wolf from within. Elowen pressed both hands over the wound. No. Ronan's eyes opened. Silver had returned to them, faint but unmistakable. You cannot take both. I can try. You will die. Be silent, Elowen. Be silent, Ronan. He almost smiled. Then the chamber doors burst open again. Commander Tereth entered at the head of the royal guard. Behind him came members of the council, pack delegates, and Lady Seraphine Morkan. Seraphine stopped when she saw Ronan bleeding in Elowen's arm. For the first time, her composure broke. She rushed forward. Ronan. Elowen's head snapped up. Seraphine stopped just beyond reach. Her gaze moved from the white fire burning through the king's chest to Maevra, standing beside the shattered vial. Something passed between the two women. Recognition. Not surprise. Recognition. Elowen saw it. So did Ronan. His voice was barely audible. You knew she was coming. Seraphine went very still. The council crowded behind her. High Chancellor Veyron, his shoulder bandaged from the assassination, stared at Maevra with horror. Commanders lifted their weapons. Temple soldiers lay groaning across the floor. Seraphine looked at Ronan. I knew the priestess intended to take Elowen into temple custody. That is not what he asked, Elowen said. Seraphine's eyes cut toward her. Elowen held Ronan tighter as another tremor moved through him. The assassins entered through the western gallery, she continued. Your family controls the western guard. Commander Tereth looked at Seraphine. The noblewoman's face hardened. My family controls thousands of soldiers. That does not mean I know the movement of every traitor wearing our colors. The assassin behind the throne was already inside the court, Ronan whispered. Inside the royal circle. Seraphine knelt before him. Her voice changed, less formal, more desperate. I did not order your death. Ronan searched her face. But you expected an attack. She said nothing. That silence became confession. The court felt it. A murmur moved through those gathered at the doors. Seraphine rose slowly. The king was never supposed to be struck. Elowen stared at her. Maevra's expression turned cold. Seraphine looked around the chamber, aware that every word now carried beyond private betrayal and into history. The assassination was meant to fail, she said. The attackers were to be discovered before they reached the throne. Evidence of Iron Fang involvement would justify war in the East and force the hesitant packs to renew their oaths. And my execution? Elowen asked. Seraphine met her gaze. Would unite the court behind the king. The answer was spoken without pleasure. That made it worse. You forged the letters, Elowen said. My father's scribes did. The soldiers beneath the eastern tower? They found one of the temple's blood chambers. They were already dying when you arrived. You sent the message using Ronan's seal. Yes. Ronan closed his eyes. Seraphine's voice shook for the first time. You were meant to be found beside them. The evidence would be undeniable. Your death would satisfy the western houses, silence the old bloodline factions, and prove the king was strong enough to condemn the woman the court believed he still loved. Elowen felt as though the room had lost all air. You built peace from my execution. I built survival from the pieces available to me. Seraphine turned toward Ronan. You know what the kingdom is becoming. The border alphas smell weakness. Grain riots have already begun in the west. Your wolf is dying. The council would never accept an Ashvale Luna, even if she were innocent. A marriage to House Morkant was the only structure strong enough to hold the realm together. Ronan opened his eyes. And when the false attack began, Seraphine looked at Maevra. The priestess changed the plan. Maevra gave a quiet laugh. Because your plan was cowardice, dressed as strategy. You promised he would not be harmed. I promised the crown would survive. Seraphine's face went white. Elowen finally understood the layers of betrayal. Seraphine had arranged false evidence and a staged assassination to secure Ronan's rule and remove Elowen permanently. She had believed herself ruthless but controlled, sacrificing one woman to prevent civil war. Maevra had used that plan to launch a real attack. The priestess never intended Ronan to survive. A dying king, a condemned blood witch, and a politically powerful bride could all be replaced by a temple-controlled heir or regency. Seraphine had not been the architect she believed herself to be. She had been another piece on Maevra's board. The white fire in Ronan's chest flared. He convulsed. Elowen pressed her palm against the wound and felt his heartbeat stumble. Once. Twice. Then stopped. The world narrowed to a terrible stillness. Ronan's body went slack in her arm. Veil disappeared from the bond. Elowen heard someone shout for the healer. She heard Seraphine gasp. She heard Maevra whisper a prayer. None of it mattered. Ronan was gone. The torn mate bond snapped. Pain ripped through Elowen so completely that, For a moment she could not see. Then something impossible happened. The severed end of the bond did not vanish. It fell into her hands. Not physically, but within the blood realm where magic became form. A silver cord lay across her palms, frayed and darkened, still warm from the life it had carried. The temple had taught that a rejected bond belonged to the moon. Ashvale blood knew older law. A bond did not belong to the moon. It belonged to those who bore it. Elowen closed both hands around the severed thread. The forbidden power inside her answered. Blood rose from every wound in the room, from fallen soldiers, from Ronan's chest, from her own palm. Crimson droplets hung motionless in the air, thousands of them catching the pale light. The court recoiled. Mavra's face transformed with fear. "Do not," the priestess said. Elowen looked up. Her eyes burned red. "You told me my blood was made to carry death." The Ashvale crest spread beneath her knees. Thorns of red light climbed the walls. Mavra backed away. "There are laws older than grief. My family obeyed them." Elowen drew the suspended blood toward Ronan. "Look what obedience bought us." She pressed one hand over his silent heart and the other against her own. The rejected bond opened, not restored, reversed. Elowen did not pull Ronan's curse into herself. She gave him her heartbeat. The first pulse struck his body like thunder. His back arched. The second pulse traveled through the palace foundation. Every wolf in Care Vale howled. The third pulse entered Vale's darkness. The great black wolf opened both eyes. Ronan inhaled. A raw, violent breath tore into his lung. Silver fire erupted from his chest, consuming the white temple flame. His hand closed around Elowen's wrist. His eyes opened, no longer gray but fully silver, bright enough to cast light across her face. Behind him, the shadow of an enormous wolf rose against the wall. The entire court dropped to its knees, not because a command forced them, because Vael had returned. Ronan looked at Elowen as though the room contained no one else. "What did you do?" Her vision blurred. Something unwise. Then blood filled her mouth. The magic holding her upright failed. Ronan caught her. This time, when she collapsed against him, he did not call for the healer. He looked toward Mavra. The revived Alpha King rose with Elowen in his arm. Vale's power rolled through the chamber, shaking dust from the beams. The curse still marked Ronan's veins, but it no longer controlled his wolf. The old chains had broken. The priestess lifted her chin. "You cannot kill me without breaking the temple compact." Ronan's gaze became colder than death. The compact was built upon the murder of House Ashvale. It was built to prevent war. "You poisoned my bloodline. We preserved it. You turned generations of women into vessels. We preserved the kingdom." His arms tightened around Elowen. "No," he said. "You preserved your authority over it." Maevra looked past him toward the council. "Remove me, and every alpha oath sealed through the temple will fail by dawn. The pacts will challenge one another. Borders will burn. Thousands will die because your rejected witch could not accept the purpose of her blood." Elowen lifted her head weakly from Ronan's chest. "She is right about one thing." Ronan looked down at her. "The oaths may fail." The council erupted into frightened whispers. High Chancellor Veyron stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if the priestess speaks truth, arresting her could fracture the realm before sunrise." Seraphine stood in silence, her face stripped of certainty. Ronan surveyed the court. Every political instinct that had ruled him for years demanded caution. Delay, compromise, preserve the structure until a safer replacement could be built. Elowen knew that king. He was the man who had rejected her beneath the Moono, the man who had believed cruelty could prevent greater pain. Ronan looked at Maevra, then at the council, finally, at Elowen. "What would you do?" he asked. A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. Kings did not ask condemned women how to preserve their throne. Elowen understood what he was truly offering, not power over him, a voice beside him. She forced herself to think past the pain. "The temple oaths bind wolves through fear of punishment," she said. "Break them tonight, and the strongest alphas will test the crown." Veyran spread his hands. "Then the priestess must remain." "No." Elowen looked toward the kneeling pack delegates. "Replace the oath before it breaks." "With what?" Commander Tereth asked. "A vow freely given." Several nobles scoffed. Elowen's eyes moved across them. "Those who remain loyal only because a priestess can poison their wolves are not loyal. Let them leave." The chamber went still. Ronan's gaze sharpened with understanding. Elowen continued. Open the Court of Wolves. Call every alpha in the capital. Reveal the curse, the temple's crimes, and the truth of House Ashvale. Then ask them to choose before the old oaths fail. They may choose rebellion, Varen said. Yes. Fear moved visibly through the council. Elowen looked at Ronan. A crown held together by hidden chains is already broken. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned to Commander Tereth. Open the court. The commander stared at him. Now? Now. Your Majesty, the city is under attack. Then let the city witness what caused it. Ronan looked toward the royal guards. Disarm the temple soldiers. Take High Priestess Maevra alive. Seal every gate beneath Moon Temple authority. Any priest who resists will be treated as an enemy of the crown. Maevra's composure finally shattered. You fool. Without us, your bloodline ends. Ronan looked down at Elowen. Then it ends free. The words moved through her like warmth. Guards closed around the priestess. She did not fight. Instead, Maevra looked at Seraphine. You wanted order, she said. Watch what your mercy creates. Seraphine flinched. The priestess was dragged from the chamber. The council followed in a storm of argument and fear. Commander Tereth shouted orders through the corridor. Bells began ringing across the capital, not in alarm now, but in summons. Only Seraphine remained. She stood several paces away, staring at Elowen in Ronan's arm. The false Luna candidate looked suddenly smaller without the certainty of her strategy. I never hated you, she said. Elowen believed her. That does not make what you did less monstrous. No. Seraphine swallowed. My father spent his life preparing me to hold a kingdom together. He taught me that one death could be mercy if it prevented 10,000. And did he teach you to volunteer your own? The question struck harder than any accusation. Seraphine looked away. Ronan's expression held no tenderness for her, but neither did it hold simple hatred. You will be confined, he said. Your father's legions will surrender their command seals before dawn. They will not. Then they declare themselves enemies of the crown. Seraphine met his eyes. You may lose the West. I nearly lost my soul preserving it. Pain flickered across her face. Perhaps she had loved him in her own way. Perhaps that had made her choices easier to justify. Guards approached. Before they took her, Seraphine looked at Elowen once more. When the Alphas refuse him tonight, remember that I tried to prevent what follows. Elowen held her gaze. I will remember everything. Seraphine was led away. Ronan carried Elowen toward the open corridor. She stirred weakly. Put me down. No. The entire court is about to see you carrying the woman you sentenced to death. Good. Ronan. His eyes met her. The king's face was pale from blood loss. Temple fire had burned a dark mark across his chest. His wolf had only just returned. Yet his hold on her remained steady. I made you stand alone before them, he said. I will not do it again. The words did not erase the past. They did not mend her trust, but they entered the wounded space between them and remained there. The doors to the Court of Wolves stood open ahead. Beyond them, hundreds had gathered beneath broken windows and blood-stained banners. Nobles, soldiers, priests, servants, pack delegates, and citizens pressed into every gallery. The execution block still stood at the center of the hall. Elowen's shattered chains lay across it. When Ronan entered carrying her, silence spread from the nearest guards to the farthest balcony. The Alpha King walked past his throne. He did not sit. Instead, he placed Elowen gently upon the highest step beside it and turned to face the kingdom. Vale's shadow rose behind him. No crown rested on Ronan's head. No priest stood at his shoulder. He looked at the people who had watched him condemn an innocent woman and spoke without court magic. I sentenced Elowen Ashvale to death. The words carried anyway. The evidence against her was forged. The assassination within this hall was enabled by those who claimed to protect the crown. The curse weakening my wolf was placed within my bloodline through rites controlled by the Moon Temple. Shock rolled through the court. Ronan did not pause. House Ashvale did not betray this kingdom. For generations, its daughters carried the poison of my ancestors so Vale kings could rule without paying the cost of their own blood. When they discovered the truth, they were destroyed. Elowen looked at him. No king in living memory had publicly named his own house guilty. Ronan's gaze moved across the gathered alphas. The temple oaths binding your wolves will fail before dawn. Any alpha who wishes to leave may leave. Any pack that wishes to challenge the crown may do so openly. A growl moved from one of the northern delegates. Ronan's eyes flashed silver. But no priest will chain your wolf again. No woman will be sacrificed in secret to preserve my throne. No bloodline will be erased because its truth is inconvenient to power. He turned toward Elowen. The entire court followed his gaze. She sat in a torn prison dress, wrists bandaged, black curse marks still visible beneath her skin. Blood stained her mouth. The execution ash remained faintly marked across her brow. Ronan descended one step, then another. He stopped before her. For 3 years, Elowen had imagined him kneeling, in anger, in regret. In dreams, she despised herself for having. None of those imaginings prepared her for the reality. The Alpha King lowered himself before the woman he had rejected and condemned. A gasp swept through the hall. Ronan bowed his head. Elowen Ashvale, I cannot return what I took from you. Her throat tightened. I cannot command forgiveness. I cannot claim the bond I broke or the life you saved. Before this court and every pack beneath the crown, I name you innocent. I restore House Ashvale, its lands, its history, and every honor stolen from its dead. He lifted his eyes to hers. And I place my judgment in your hands. The power in the hall changed. The man who had once decided her worth before an audience now gave her the authority to answer before the same kingdom. Elowen could have humiliated him. She could have named him coward, ordered his throne stripped, or demanded blood for blood. Every eye waited for revenge. She looked at the execution block, at the chain, at the kneeling king. Then she looked beyond him to the frightened alphas, wounded soldiers, and servants who had lived their entire lives beneath systems neither of them had created. I do not want your death, she said. Ronan did not move. I wanted the truth. Her voice strengthened. Now that it stands before us, no crown, temple, or council will bury it again. She held out her hand, not to restore the mate bond. Not yet. Ronan understood. He placed his bloodied palm beneath hers without closing his fingers. Elowen rose. The last daughter of Ashvale stood beside the kneeling king, not above him. Then the northern doors opened. A pack messenger stumbled into the court, snow and blood covering his cloak. Your Majesty, he gasped. The Western legions have raised Morcant banners over the river gates. Lord Morcant declares the king bewitched and the throne compromised. Seraphine's warning had become reality. The free choice Ronan offered the kingdom had received its first answer. War. Across the galleries, wolves began to growl. Ronan rose beside Elowen. The fragile moment of public reversal hardened into something darker. Commander Tereth drew his sword. How many? 8,000 within the outer districts. More marching from the west. The chancellor went pale. The capital cannot withstand a siege from within. Elowen felt the curse pulse beneath her skin. Not gone. Waiting. Somewhere beyond the city walls, a second source of black blood answered it. Maevra had not brought only one vial. Elowen turned toward the western windows. The moon above Care Vale was changing. A dark red shadow spread across its face. An eclipse. Ronan followed her gaze. What is it? Elowen remembered her mother's final lesson, spoken while Ashvale Keep burned above them. When the crown's curse is broken, those who fed it will seek a greater vessel. The bells across the city stopped, all at once. Then a roar rose from beyond the western walls. Not from one wolf, from thousands. Every Morcant soldier shifted beneath the blood-red moon, and none of them shifted into wolves. The creatures rising beyond the western walls had once been wolves. Elowen knew that from the way they moved. They still carried the memory of four-legged grace, but corruption had dragged their bodies into shapes no natural beast would choose. Their backs arched too high. Their forelegs had lengthened into black-jointed limbs ending in hooked claw. Bone-white antlers tore through patches of fur along their skulls, and pale human faces strained beneath the skin of their chests, as if other souls had been sewn inside them. 8,000 soldiers had shifted. 8,000 monsters answered the eclipse. The first of them struck the river gate. Ancient oak split from top to bottom. The court of wolves erupted. Pack delegates shouted orders. Nobles fled the galleries. Royal guards dragged wounded soldiers away from the doors, while Commander Tereth climbed the execution dais and called for every available unit to reinforce the western district. Ronan did not look away from the red moon. What are they? Elowen felt the curse beneath her skin pull toward the creatures beyond the walls. Empty vessels. The High Chancellor turned on her. Speak plainly. The temple rites bound every sworn soldier to the royal bloodline. When Ronan broke the central curse, those bonds opened. Elowen pressed one hand against the black veins climbing her forearm. Someone filled them before the men could reclaim themselves. With what? Tareth asked. The same corruption that poisoned Vale. A second impact shook the palace. Dust rained from the rafters. From the western district came the sound of stone collapsing and people screaming. Ronan reached for the sword a guard offered him. Elowen caught his wrist. You cannot fight them as you are. His silver eyes dropped to her hand. The city is under attack, and your heart stopped less than an hour ago. It began again. That does not make you immortal. No. His gaze hardened. It makes me responsible. He pulled free, not roughly, and fastened the sword at his side. The motion carried the familiar finality of a king who had decided his own life was an acceptable price. Elowen hated how well she knew it. Tareth approached. Your Majesty, the inner western bridges can be raised, but thousands of civilians remain beyond them. Then the bridges remain down until they cross. The corrupted soldiers will reach the palace. Not before the people do. The commander bowed and turned toward his officers. Ronan faced the gathered alphas. You asked whether the crown could hold without temple chains. Decide now. Several looked away. One did not. Alpha Garrick of Frostmere, a broad, scarred northern leader who had demanded Elowen's execution only days before, stepped forward. His white wolf pressed visibly beneath his skin. My oath is gone, he said. The hall quieted. Ronan waited. Garrick removed the iron clasp bearing the Moon Temple symbol from his cloak. He dropped it onto the floor and crushed it beneath his boot. My choice remains. He drew his sword and knelt. Frostmere stands with the crown. One by one, others follow. Not all. 3 western alphas backed toward the southern doors. A river lord removed his crown clasp and left without speaking. 2 pack leaders exchanged fearful glances, then followed him. Ronan did not order them stop. That mattered. The old king would have. The Moon Temple would have torn their wolves apart before they crossed the threshold. Ronan let them choose. The loyalty of those who remained became heavier because it was no longer compulsory. Elowen looked at the kneeling alphas and understood that freedom did not make obedience easier. It made it real. A horn sounded from the western district. 3 long notes. The first defense line had fallen. Ronan descended the throne steps. Elowen followed. He turned sharply. You are staying here. No, you can barely remain upright. So can you. I have a wolf. You have a wolf recovering from 20 years of poison. And you have a body carrying enough curse magic to kill an army. That is precisely why I am coming. His expression darkened. The court moved around them, but for a moment they stood inside a private stillness. Elowen, he said, lowering his voice. You have given enough. The words struck the oldest wound in her, not because they were cruel, because they offered the kind of protection she had once begged him for. So late. She held his gaze. You do not decide when I have given enough. A shadow of pain passed through his face. Then he bowed his head once. Not surrender. Recognition. Stay beside me. I will stand where I choose. The faintest warmth entered his silver eyes. Then choose near me. They left the Court of Wolves together. The palace corridors had become rivers of movement. Servants carried buckets, bandages, and weapons. Children from the western districts huddled beneath stairwells while guards directed families toward the lower vault. Temple symbols were being torn from doors and burned in iron braziers. As Ronan passed, people bowed. When Elowen followed, some recoiled. Others stared at the black veins beneath her skin. A little girl in a torn blue cloak stepped from her mother's grasp. The child held a wooden wolf with one leg missing. Did you really bring the king back? Her mother pulled her away, horrified. Forgive her, my lady. Elowen looked down at the girl. No. The child's face fell. Elowen touched the wooden wolf gently. He came back because he chose to fight. Ronan heard. He said nothing until they reached the outer stairway. Then he murmured, that was kinder than the truth. It was the truth. You gave me your heartbeat. I opened a door. You returned through it. He looked at her for a long moment. The bells resumed before he could answer. Outside, Care Vale burned. The western sky glowed red beneath the eclipse. Smoke rolled above slate rooftops. The capital had been built on 7 descending levels, each divided by fortified walls and narrow stone bridges. From the palace heights, Elowen could see the dark tide of corrupted soldiers pouring through the broken river gate. Royal archers lined the upper battlements. They loosed. Silver-tipped arrows fell in glittering waves. The first rank of creatures went down, then rose again. Black roots grew from their wounds, pulling torn flesh together. "They are feeding from the curse," Elowen said. Ronan watched one creature drag itself forward despite 3 arrows through its skull. "Can they be killed?" "Not while the source remains open." "Where is it?" Elowen closed her eyes. The blood beneath her skin answered the thousands below. One pulse came from the Western army. Another came from farther away, deeper. Below the city, her eyes open. The Moon Temple. Tareth stood beside them, shouting commands to runners. The temple was sealed. The building was sealed, Elowen said, not what lies beneath it. Maevra had spent years preparing for the failure of the crown curse, the preserved blood, the hidden soldiers, the alternate vessel. The priestess had not gambled everything on one confrontation inside the palace. She had built a second heart for the corruption. Ronan looked toward the lower eastern quarter where the Moon Temple rose above the city, its white towers glowing red beneath the eclipse. If we destroy the source, the vessels may return to themselves. May? Or D? His jaw tightened. Elowen felt the answer he did not want to speak. 8,000 corrupted soldiers were still men beneath the curse. They could not simply be slaughtered, not unless there was no other choice. Commander Tareth approached. The civilians from the 6th level are crossing now. We can hold the inner bridge perhaps half an hour. Ronan drew his sword. You will hold longer. We will try. No. Ronan's gaze shifted to the commander. You will hold until Elowen and I reach the temple. Tareth stared. You cannot go beneath the city while the capital is under siege. The siege will not end until the source is cut. Then send soldiers. Elowen looked at the creatures climbing the western walls. Anyone bound through the old temple rites may become another vessel when they approach it. Tareth understood. The royal guard had all taken those oaths. So had nearly every alpha in the capital. Ronan and Elowen were the only ones whose bonds had already broken. I am coming, Tareth said. No, Ronan answered. You are the only commander every remaining pack will obey. Tareth's face hardened. I served your father when he burned Ashvale. Elowen turned toward him. The commander did not look away. I followed orders I knew were built on fear, he said. I told myself a soldier's duty was obedience. If the temple is the source of that lie, I should see it ended. You should, Elowen said, but not today. His eyes narrowed. She looked toward the people still fleeing across the inner bridges. Today you keep them alive. Tareth bowed his head. Ronan stepped toward the battlement stairs. Elowen caught a glimpse of movement below. A prisoner was being escorted through the courtyard beneath heavy guard. Seraphine. Her crimson court gown had been replaced by a plain dark cloak. Her hands were chained before her, but she still carried herself with the straight-backed control of a woman walking into a council chamber. She looked toward the western city, then up at Ronan. Bring her here, Elowen said. Ronan's expression hardened. Why? The Morcant soldiers may still recognize her. They are no longer soldiers. She knows their command structure, their hidden routes, the places her father would fortify. She arranged your death, and she may help prevent thousands more. Ronan looked as though every part of him rejected the idea. Elowen did not soften. You asked what I would do. His gaze shifted to Seraphine below. Then he signaled the guard. They brought her up the stairs. Seraphine stopped before them with smoke moving behind her like a torn veil. The river gate has fallen, she said. Ronan's voice was cold. You sound unsurprised. My father reinforced it against attacks from outside, not from soldiers already stationed within. Elowen stepped closer. What lies beneath the Moon Temple? Seraphine's attention moved to her. For once, no polished answer appeared immediately. I do not know. You knew Maevra planned to take me. I knew she wanted your blood contained. You knew enough to cooperate with her. I cooperated because without the temple, Ronan's wolf would die and the Western Alphas would rebel. They are rebelling now. Seraphine looked toward the monsters tearing through her family's district. My father would never order that. Your father opened the gates. He believed the soldiers would seize the palace and force a regency. Ronan's face became lethal. A regency under whom? Seraphine remained silent. Under you? he asked. Her eyes met his. Under the air I was expected to give you. The words carried no seduction, only political arithmetic. Ronan stepped toward her. Elowen placed herself between them. He stopped. Furious. Seraphine looked from one to the other. The marriage contract had already been drafted, she said. If your wolf failed publicly, the council would declare you unfit. I would be crowned regent until an heir came of age. There is no heir, Elowen said. Seraphine's face went pale. Ronan saw it. What? Seraphine looked away. The truth arrived before she spoke. You were never going to conceive one, Elowen said. The false Luna candidate closed her eyes. When the temple examined me last winter, Maivra said the crown curse had made Ronan incapable of fathering a living child. Ronan went still. Seraphine continued quietly. She proposed another solution. Elowen felt cold spread through her. What solution? A child from the old royal blood. Ronan's hand tightened around his sword. My uncle, he said. Seraphine nodded. Lord Cassian Vale, Ronan's father's younger brother. The royal uncle who had spent 15 years overseeing distant border provinces and appeared at court only for coronations, funerals, and succession councils. A man close enough to the throne to inherit, but far enough from power to appear harmless. The regency was never meant to protect my rule, Ronan said. No, Seraphine answered. It was meant to replace you. A roar shook the western district. One of the monstrous vessels climbed the inner wall and tore an archer from the battlement. Ronan turned toward the moon temple. Cassian is beneath it. Seraphine's silence confirmed she had reached the same conclusion. Elowen looked at the chains around her wrists. Remove them. Ronan looked at her sharply. Seraphine lifted her hands. You cannot mean to trust me. I do not. Elowen drew a dagger from the belt of the nearest guard. She cut through the first chain clasp. You know the private western passages. You know your father's commands. And Maevra believed you useful enough to keep partially informed. The second chain fell. Seraphine rubbed her wrists. What prevents me from leading you into a trap? Nothing. Elowen handed her the dagger. That is what choice feels like. Seraphine stared at the weapon. Ronan's anger pressed through the air like a storm. You would arm the woman who sent you to execution? I would give her one chance to decide who she is without her father, the temple, or the throne deciding for her. Seraphine's fingers closed around the dagger. Pain moved across her face, brief and almost invisible. I do not deserve your trust. You do not have it. Elowen turned toward the eastern stair. You have an opportunity. The three of them descended into the burning city. They traveled without banners. Ronan wore a dark cloak over his blood-stained shirt. Elowen took a short sword from the armory, though her hands trembled around the hilt. Seraphine led them through service passages built inside the city walls, routes used for grain, transport, and troop movement during winter siege. Above them, battle thundered. At each crossing, Elowen felt the corrupted army growing stronger. The red moon fed the black veins beneath her skin. Whispers gathered at the edge of her hearing. Take them, carry them, end the hunger. Her blood wanted to become a vessel. The desire was not noble. It was instinct. House Ashvale magic had been shaped through centuries of sacrifice until pain felt like purpose. Elowen dug her nails into her palm. Ronan noticed. What do you hear? Nothing. Elowen. She kept walking. He caught her arm. The passage was narrow enough that Seraphine had to stop ahead of them. Ronan's gaze dropped to the black veins moving beneath Elowen's skin. The curse is calling you. I can resist it. That was not my question. She looked at him. I hear everyone it touches. How many? Thousands. His face changed. They are afraid, she said. Some are still conscious inside those bodies. Some cannot remember their names. They feel the curse using their wolves, but they cannot stop it. Ronan loosened his grip. Can they feel you? Yes. What do they want? Elowen swallowed. They want me to take it from them. Seraphine's face had gone white. My soldiers. Your father's soldiers, Elowen corrected. The distinction may matter before this ends. They continued. The passage opened beneath the eastern market. The city above had not yet fallen, but panic had reached it. Stalls burned. Families fled toward the palace. Royal soldiers fought small groups of temple-bound creatures that had emerged from hidden sanctuaries. A boy stood trapped beneath an overturned cart. His mother pulled at the wood while a corrupted wolf approached through the smoke. Ronan moved first. He shifted before the creature reached them. Vale erupted into the street. The black wolf was larger than Elowen remembered, though years of curse had left pale scars across his fur. Silver light burned along his spine. He struck the corrupted beast broadside and drove it through a stone stall. The creature twisted beneath him, antlers gouging toward his throat. Vale caught one in his jaws and broke it. Black blood sprayed across the street. The curse beneath Elowen's skin surged toward it. She nearly fell. Seraphine caught her. Elowen shoved her away by instinct. Seraphine released her immediately. "No pity," she said. Elowen looked at her. "I remember." Together, they lifted the cart enough for the mother to pull her son free. Vale tore the corrupted creature's throat open. It did not die. Black roots knitted the wound. Elowen approached. The monster turned its pale, human face toward her. A man's voice came from somewhere inside its chest. "Milady." She recognized him. Captain Orsic. He had commanded Seraphine's household guard during her first year at court. A disciplined man with a scar across his chin, and 2 daughters who lived near the western orchard. Seraphine froze. "Captain?" The creature shuddered. Its hooked claws gouged trenches into the street as it tried to hold itself still. "Kill me," the trapped man whispered. Seraphine raised the dagger. Elowen stopped her. "No." The monster lunged. Vale pinned it again. Elowen placed both hands against its skull. The curse flooded toward her. Thousands of voices opened at once. She screamed. Ronan shifted back beside her, naked beneath the smoke until Seraphine threw him the dark cloak. He caught Elowen as the black veins climbed her neck. "Release him," he ordered. "I am not taking it." "Then what are you doing?" "Finding the path." She pushed deeper. The curse inside Orsic did not originate in his body. It traveled through an oath mark burned into the base of his wolf skull. The mark connected him to other soldiers, then to a vast network descending beneath the Moon Temple. At the center of that network beat something enormous, not a heart, a womb, a chamber built to hold blood, bone, and inherited magic, until corruption could be born into a living form, and inside it waited a wolf larger than Vale, a white wolf with a crown of black antlers, Lord Cassian's beast. Elowen tore her hands away. Orsic collapsed. His body began changing. The antlers receded. The hooked limbs shortened. Fur pulled back from human skin. He lay naked and unconscious in the street. Alive. Seraphine dropped beside him. "You freed him." "Temporarily." Ronan steadied Elowen. "What did you see?" "Cassian." His expression hardened. "He is not controlling the curse," she said. "He is becoming it." They reached the Moon Temple as the eclipse covered the final edge of silver. The white towers had turned black beneath the red sky. Temple gates stood open. No guards waited outside. Inside, hundreds of candles burned without flame, each wick producing a thin stream of darkness. Statues of moon goddesses lined the central nave, their stone faces covered by silver veils. The air smelled of old blood. Seraphine led them past the altar toward a narrow door hidden behind a hanging tapestry. "My father brought me through here once," she said. "He said every ruler should know where the kingdom's true foundations were buried." Ronan's voice was bitter. He meant its crimes. They descended. The stairs spiraled deep beneath the city. The walls changed from white temple stone to black foundations older than Caer Vale itself. Ashvale runes appeared beneath layers of chiseled temple symbols. Elowen touched one. A memory entered her, her mother descending these same stairs, not as a prisoner, as a young woman wearing a red ceremonial cloak. Priests bowed as she passed. A Vale king lay dying below, and she had come willingly to absorb the madness poisoning his wolf. The memory changed. Years later, her mother stood in the same passage, older and afraid. She held evidence written in royal blood. She had discovered the temple was no longer merely containing the curse. They were feeding it, using fragments of corrupted wolf spirit to control succession, obedience, and war. Elowen pulled her hand away. "My mother knew." Ronan stopped beside her. "She discovered the temple had altered the curse," Elowen said. "That is why Ashvale rebelled, not to seize the throne, to expose the system beneath it." Seraphine looked down the dark passage. "And my family helped silence them." Elowen said nothing. There was no comfort large enough for inherited guilt, only choice. They reached the bottom. A circular door stood before them, carved with 3 symbols. the Ashen Crown, the Moon Temple Crescent, and the Thorned Wolf of House Ashvale. Blood filled the grooves. Fresh blood. Ronan placed his hand against the crown. Nothing happened. Seraphine touched the crescent. The door trembled but remained closed. Both looked at Elowen. She stared at the Ashvale crest. For generations, her family's blood had been the final key, the necessary sacrifice. She cut her palm. Ronan caught her wrist before the blood touched stone. No. The door will not open otherwise. Then we break it. You cannot break a blood gate with steel. I will not watch another door demand your blood. Elowen looked at him. This was not strategy. It was fear. But unlike before, he did not hide it beneath cruelty. He offered it honestly. She placed her uncut hand over his. "One drop," she said. "Freely given." His jaw tightened. "One." She pressed her bleeding palm to the crest. The door opened. Beyond it lay the womb of the curse. The chamber was vast enough to hold the palace throne room. Black roots covered the walls, pulsing like veins. Thousands of silver threads descended from the ceiling, each connected to a soldier bound through temple oaths. At the center stood a lake of blood. A stone platform rose above it. Lord Cassian Vale knelt there beneath the eclipse light pouring through a shaft cut all the way to the surface. He wore white ceremonial armor. Black antlers had begun growing from his skull. High Priestess Maevra stood beside him, freed from royal custody through passages no palace guard knew existed. Her wrists were bruised from chains, but triumph had returned to her face. Lord Morcant stood on the other side. Seraphine's father looked older than he had in court, his golden hair streaked with gray, his broad frame wrapped in Western armor. When he saw his daughter, relief flashed across his face, then anger. "You should not be here." Seraphine stepped into the chamber. "Neither should you." Lord Morcant's gaze moved to the dagger in her hand. "I built everything for you. You built a throne from Ronan's corpse. I built a future no council could take from you." Ronan drew his sword. Cassian slowly lifted his head. His eyes were entirely black. "Nephew." The voice came from him and from the roots covering the chamber. Ronan stopped at the edge of the blood lake. "You poisoned my father." Cassian smiled. "Your father poisoned himself. Pride made him easy to guide. You placed the curse in the coronation rite. I strengthened what was already there." Maevra lifted her chin. The veil line had grown unstable, too powerful, too independent of sacred authority. Cassian's fingers lengthened into claws. The temple needed a king it could shape. Morcant needed a crown it could inherit. I needed what your father stole from me at birth. The throne. The wolf. Ronan's expression shifted. Cassian laughed. "You never wondered why Vale was stronger than every royal beast before him. Why your father feared you before you could speak." Elowen felt the truth moving through the blood lake. Vale's power had not come from Ronan alone. At Ronan's birth, the temple had divided an ancient twin wolf inheritance. One royal beast had awakened in the firstborn heir. The other had been denied, starved, bound inside Cassian. "You believe my wolf was dying because of a curse," Cassian said. "Mine was never allowed to live." The black roots trembled. A vast shape moved beneath the blood. "Tonight, I take back every piece given to you." The lake erupted. A white wolf crowned in black antlers rose behind Cassian, formed from blood, bone, and the stolen spirits of thousands of soldiers. Vale surged beneath Ronan's skin, not in fear, recognition. "Brother." The two royal wolves had once been one inheritance, divided by temple design. Cassian raised his hand. Every silver thread in the chamber tightened. Across the city, 8,000 corrupted soldiers roared. Their strength poured into him. His body began to change. White fur tore through his armor. His spine lengthened. Black antlers split wider above his skull. Ronan stepped forward. Elowen seized his cloak. "He wants you close. He has my people. He has half of your wolf." Ronan looked at her. The bond between them flickered, no longer fully broken but not restored. A fragile path built from choice rather than instinct. "I cannot let him keep either." He shifted. Vale leapt across the blood lake. Cassian met him in monstrous form. The impact split the platform. White and black wolves crashed through stone pillars, claws tearing fur, antlers striking silver fire. Each wound Cassian suffered closed instantly as power flowed through the threads. Vales did not. Ronan was stronger in will. Cassian had an army feeding him. Lord Morcant drew his sword and moved toward Seraphine. "Come with me." She raised the dagger. "Stand down. You are my daughter. I was your instrument. I made you indispensable. You made me willing to murder an innocent woman." His face hardened. One woman against a kingdom. Seraphine's eyes filled, but her hand remained steady. "That was always your arithmetic." He lunged. Their blades struck. Seraphine had been trained for court defense, not war. Her father drove her backward with brutal efficiency. The dagger flew from her hand. He caught her by the throat. "I will not lose you to guilt." Elowen moved. Black roots burst from the floor between them. Maevra raised her staff. The priestess's power caught Elowen across the chest and threw her toward the blood lake. She stopped at the edge. Below, thousands of faces moved beneath the surface. Ashvale women, royal wolves, soldiers, all the lives used to build the curse. Maevra approached. "You could end their suffering." Elowen looked at her. "By becoming the final vessel, by fulfilling the purpose of your blood. My blood has no purpose beyond what I choose." The priestess's expression twisted. "Choice is a luxury purchased by those willing to let others die." "No." Elowen rose. "Choice is what you feared, because it would make your sacrifices answerable." Maevra struck again. Elowen lifted both hands. Blood-red magic erupted between them. The forces collided. The chamber shook. Black roots tore from the walls. Silver threads snapped, each one releasing a scream from the city above. Elowen could feel the soldiers. Every thread she broke freed one mind but sent the stored corruption deeper into Cassian. He grew larger. Veil disappeared beneath his claw. Ronan's pain tore through the bond. Elowen staggered. Maevra smiled. "You cannot save the soldiers and the king." There it was. The old law. Always a choice between one life and many. Always someone required to bleed beneath the crown. Elowen looked at the blood lake, at the thousands of trapped spirits, at Ronan fighting his uncle, at Seraphine choking beneath her father's hand. Then she saw the lie. The curse had survived by dividing them. King from vessel, wolf from man, duty from love, one life from many. It forced every generation to choose who would be sacrificed, because no one had ever refused the structure itself. Elowen drove both hands into the blood lake. Power swallowed her. The chamber vanished. She entered every bound mind at once. 8,000 soldiers, hundreds of Ashvale ancestors, royal wolves born and broken across centuries. She felt their fear, fury, obedience, and grief crash through her body. For one terrible instant, she nearly became the vessel Maevra wanted. Then Elowen spoke into the network. "Not a comment, a question. Do you choose this?" The curse faltered. It had never been asked. The first answer came from Captain Orsic. "No." Then another. "No." A soldier trapped beneath antlers. A temple acolyte bound at childhood. A dead Ashvale mother whose spirit had been used to strengthen the rites. "No." The word spread. Thousands of voices became one. "No." The silver threads turned red. Cassian roared. Power stopped flowing into him. Across the chamber, his wounds opened. Veil rose beneath him and tore one black antler from his skull. Lord Morcant looked toward the failing roots. Seraphine drove her knee into his chest and broke free. He reached for his sword. She picked up the fallen dagger. For one heartbeat, father and daughter faced each other. He expected her to hesitate. She did. Then he looked toward Elowen and raised his blade. Seraphine struck first. The dagger entered beneath his armor. Lord Morcant stared at her, not with anger, with disbelief. "You were meant to rule." Seraphine held him as his knees failed. "No," she whispered. "I was meant to obey." He collapsed. She lowered him to the floor rather than let him fall. Across the lake, Cassian shifted back halfway, human features breaking through the monstrous skull. "No," he gasped. "They are mine." Ronan returned to human form long enough to seize the broken antler. "They were never yours." He drove it through Cassian's chest. The royal uncle screamed. The curse tore free. A black mass erupted from his body and surged toward Elowen. Maevra lifted both hands, guiding it. At last, the priestess breathed. The corruption struck Elowen. Ronan shouted her name. The chamber disappeared inside darkness. Elowen stood once more on black water. This time, she was alone. The curse rose around her, wearing the faces of everyone she had lost. Her mother, her father, Ronan, even herself as a child. "You cannot destroy hunger," it whispered. "You can only give it a home." Elowen looked down. The black water reflected a woman crowned in thorns, powerful enough to command every wolf in the kingdom. A queen no one could reject. A vessel no one could humiliate. All she had to do was accept. Take the curse. Take the wolves. Take the throne. Make them kneel. The temptation was not power alone. It was safety. No one could abandon what they fear. No one could condemn what ruled them. Elowen closed her eyes. She remembered Ronan kneeling before her. Not because magic forced him, because he chose to. She remembered Alpha Garrick crushing his oath clasp. She remembered Seraphine taking the dagger with no promise of forgiveness. She remembered 8,000 trapped soldiers answering no. Power taken could create obedience. Only freedom could reveal devotion. Elowen opened her eyes. I will not be your home. The curse smiled with her mother's face. Then where will you send us? Elowen looked toward the faint silver thread connecting her to Ronan. Not into him, through him. Beyond the crown, to the place from which every forced bond had drawn its authority, the ashen crown itself. Above the palace, the ancient crown rested upon the empty throne, carved from moon oak, bound with alpha fang, fed for centuries by blood oaths. Elowen seized the curse, not as a vessel, as a guide. She opened every broken oath and gave the corruption a path back to the object that had anchored them. The darkness fled through her, across the city, into the palace. The ashen crown ignited. In the court of wolves, nobles and wounded guards watched black fire erupt from the throne. The crown split, every fang embedded within it shattered. The moon oak throne cracked from seat to base. Then the entire symbol of royal domination collapsed into ash. Beneath the temple, Cassian screamed as the final source of his power vanished. The white wolf behind him dissolved. For a moment, a smaller pale wolf appeared, thin, unscarred. The beast Cassian might have carried if no one had denied it life. It looked at Vale, then faded. Cassian fell. The black antler remained through his heart. Maevra dropped her staff. The priestess stared upward as though she could see the ruined throne through layers of stone. What have you done? Elowen returned to her body. Blood poured from her nose and mouth. She pulled herself from the lake. I ended the crown you were preserving. Maevra Lunchit. Not with magic. With bare hand, Ronan intercepted her. He caught the priestess by the throat and drove her against the stone platform. Vale's claws emerged from his fingers. Maevra did not struggle. Kill me, she whispered. Prove the new kingdom begins like every old one. Ronan's hand tightened. Elowen saw the fury in him. His father had been manipulated, his wolf poisoned, his life shaped by prophecy, fear, and temple lies. He wanted her dead. So did Elowen. But Maevra's death in anger would become another hidden sacrifice used to protect a throne that no longer existed. Ronan. He looked at Elowen. Let her stand before everyone. Maevra's eyes widened. Death would have made her a martyr. Truth would make her answerable. Ronan released her. Chain her, he ordered. Seraphine stood over her father's body. Her hands were covered in his blood. She did not cry. Not yet. Elowen approached carefully. Seraphine looked at her. I killed him. You stopped him. I spent years becoming exactly what he wanted. And tonight? Seraphine looked toward Maevra being bound by the fallen silver threads of her own temple. Tonight I chose too late. Elowen's voice softened, though not into forgiveness. Late is not the same as never. The chamber began collapsing. Without the curse sustaining it, the black roots withered. Stone split overhead. The blood lake drained into cracks opening beneath the platform. Ronan lifted Elowen into his arms before she could protest. This argument can wait. I can walk. The floor is disappearing. That is not permission. It is sufficient cause. Despite the destruction around them, something almost tender moved through his voice. They climbed toward the surface with Seraphine behind them and royal prisoners dragging Maevra between them. Cassian and Lord Morcant remained beneath the temple as the chamber collapsed. When they emerged into the nave, dawn had begun. The eclipse was ending. Silver returned to the moon's edge. Outside, the corrupted army had fallen. Thousands of soldiers lay across the streets in human form, wounded, confused, but alive. Antlers crumbled into ash. Black roots withdrew from their bodies. The western banners had been lowered. No order had commanded it. The soldiers lowered them themselves. Ronan carried Elowen through the temple gates. The city saw them. A crowd had gathered despite the smoke and ruin. Royal guards, western soldiers, servants, children, wounded alphas, and citizens stood together beneath the fading red moon. They looked at Ronan. Then behind him, toward the distant palace, where the highest tower once displayed the shadow of the ashen crown, Only smoke remained. A kingdom had awakened without the symbol that had ruled it for centuries. Fear moved through the crowd. Then Alpha Garrick stepped forward. He looked at Ronan. No crown. Ronan set Elowen gently on her feet. No. No temple oath. No. Garrick glanced at the thousands around him. Then what makes you king? The question would once have been treason. Now it was necessary. Ronan looked at Elowen. She did not answer for him. He faced the crowd. Nothing that you do not choose. Silence followed. A king without a magical crown. An alpha without forced oaths. A man standing before packs now free to abandon him. Garrick knelt. Not to the bloodline, not to the throne. To Ronan Vale, he said, who broke the chain even when it cost him the crown. Captain Orsic, barely able to stand, lowered himself beside the northern alpha. To Elowen Ashvale, he said, who asked us whether we chose. One by one, the others followed. Not all. Some remained standing. Ronan led them. That was the beginning, not the kneeling, the freedom to remain upright. Elowen felt the last violent pulse of curse magic leave her vein. Her knees weakened. Ronan caught her. The crowd blurred. She heard him call her name as darkness closed in. But this time the darkness held no chain, only rest. When Elowen woke again, sunlight filled the old moon garden. Winter had begun to loosen its hold on Caer Vale. Water dripped from the stone wolves along the walls. Small green shoots pushed through patches of melting snow. She lay beneath a fur blanket on a carved bench. Ronan sat beside the frozen fountain. He wore no armor, no crown, only a black coat fastened at the throat and the exhaustion of a man who had spent 7 days rebuilding a kingdom while refusing to leave the garden for longer than necessary. You are staring, Elowen said. His eyes closed briefly. Relief. Then they opened. You were unconscious for 6 days, and you spent all 6 rehearsing that accusation. I spent all 6 deciding whether to wake you by force. That sounds like the old Ronan. The old Ronan would have ordered the healer to do it. And the new? Considered begging. She studied him. There was no humor in his face, but there was honesty. Master Halric had removed most of the corruption from her body. Thin black lines remained around her wrists, permanent reminders of the curse she had refused to carry. Ronan's chest bore a matching mark where temple fire had stopped his heart. The bond between them was quiet, present, unclaimed. Elowen sat up slowly. What happened to Mavra? She confessed before the packs. Willingly? No. Ronan looked toward the bare branches above them. The temple archives were opened. Her own records spoke when she would not. She has been stripped of authority and sentenced to spend the rest of her life recording the names of every person the temple erased. Elowen considered that. Death would have been easier. Yes, good. And Seraphine? Confined to the western estate until judgment. Elowen looked at him. She helped save the soldiers. She also arranged your execution. I have not forgotten. Ronan's face tightened at the word. She remembered his rejection. Not every image burned by temple fire had returned, but enough remained. More importantly, she remembered the truth of it. He had wounded her. He had chosen for her. He had also changed. Both could exist. She should stand trial, Elowen said, publicly. Let the families of the 12 soldiers beneath the eastern tower speak. Let the western packs hear her reasons and decide whether they still believe necessity excuses everything. Ronan nodded. And the throne? She asked. Gone. I noticed. The council wants another built. Of course they do. They are uncomfortable speaking to a king who stands at the same height. And what did you tell them? That discomfort is not a threat to the realm. Elowen looked toward the palace rising beyond the garden wall. What will replace the crown? A charter between the packs. Voluntary oaths renewed each winter. A council with the power to challenge royal judgment publicly. Her eyebrows rose. That sounds dangerous. It is. Good. Ronan turned toward her. There is one matter the council refuses to discuss without you. She already knew. House Ashvale. Its lands had been restored by decree, but titles and property were the smallest pieces of what had been stolen. Her family's history had been rewritten. Their sacrifice buried, their descendants ended, until only she remained. What do they want? She asked. To name you High Luna. Elowen went still. Not queen, Ronan added. Not consort. A separate authority over magical law, blood rights, and pack bonds. And who suggested this? Garrick. That is unexpected. He remains terrified of you. Better. Ronan almost smiled. The warmth vanished quickly. I told them the decision was yours. Elowen looked at him. Every important choice he had once taken from her, he now returned without condition. It did not erase the past, but it built something different beside it. "And what do you want?" she asked. The question unsettled him, perhaps because kings were often asked what they commanded, rarely what they wanted. Ronan stood and walked toward the frozen fountain. "I want the kingdom rebuilt without another hidden victim beneath it. That is what you want as king." His shoulders tightened. Elowen waited. When he turned, the guarded Alpha King was gone. In his place stood the man from the Moon Garden years ago, the one who had once opened a gate with bleeding hands because a frightened girl had been told no one should touch her. "I want you to stay." Her chest tightened. Ronan did not move closer. "I want to hear you argue in every council chamber. I want Vale to stop pacing whenever you leave a room. I want to know what memories the temple fire took and spend the rest of my life giving you better ones." Elowen looked down. "But I will not ask you to restore the bond," he said. "Not because I do not want it, because wanting it does not give me the right." The silver thread between them stirred. Quiet. Passion. A mate bond could demand. Love could not. "What happens if I leave?" she asked. His face went pale, but his voice remained steady. "I open the gates. And if I never forgive you, I remain grateful that you lived. And if I stay only as High Luna, I stand beside you." She looked at him. "And if someday I choose more?" The control in his expression broke, only slightly. "Enough. Then I will spend every day proving I understand the difference between being chosen and taking." Elowen rose from the bench. Her legs were unsteady, but she crossed the distance between them without help. Ronan remained perfectly still. She placed one hand against the scar on his palm, the bond warm. Vale stirred inside him, not with dominance or hunger, but recognition. Elowen's own wolf had remained silent for 7 years, perhaps dead, perhaps hidden, perhaps never meant to awaken in the way the court expected. Then something moved inside her, softly. A red-furred she-wolf opened her eyes beneath a crown of thorn. Not powerful enough to command armies, not ancient enough to fulfill prophecy, simply hers. Elowen gasped. Ronan felt it. Silver filled his eyes. "She is alive." Tears blurred Elowen's vision. All her life, people had believed the fall of Ashvale killed her wolf. Healers had called her incomplete. The court had treated her silence as proof that her bloodline was broken, but her wolf had not died. She had hidden inside the blood magic, carrying every curse Elowen could not yet survive, waiting until no chain remained. Ronan lowered himself before her, not in court, not before an audience. In the garden where they had first learned to trust one another, he pressed his forehead to her hand. Elowen felt no triumph, only grief for everything they had lost, and the fragile possibility of what remained. She touched his face. Ronan looked up. "This is not forgiveness," she whispered. "I know. It is not a restored bond. I know. It is a beginning." His eyes closed. When they opened, devotion stood where fear had once lived. "A beginning is more than I deserve." Elowen leaned down and kissed him, not as Luna to King, not as a rejected mate returning to the man who had claimed her, as a woman choosing one moment, one man, one uncertain future. The bond did not snap close. It unfolded, slowly, a silver-red thread winding between two hearts without chain. Weeks later, the rebuilt Court of Wolves opened beneath a roof of clear winter glass. The black throne was gone. In its place stood a circular table of moonstone large enough for every pack leader to sit without bowing. The execution block had been broken into paving stones for the public road outside the palace. Elowen stood beside Ronan before the gathered kingdom. She wore no heavy crown, only a simple circlet shaped like thorn branches, forged from the remains of her shattered chain. Ronan wore one of black iron without fangs or temple symbols. Seraphine stood under guard before the court. She confessed to forging the evidence, arranging the false attack, and sacrificing Elowen's life for political stability. She did not ask for mercy. The families of the dead soldiers spoke. Some demanded execution. Others asked that Seraphine spend her life repairing the western districts destroyed by the plan she helped create. Elowen did not decide alone. Neither did Ronan. The court judged her together. Seraphine was stripped of rank and inheritance. She was sentenced to serve the families displaced by the Western Uprising and to testify in every province about the alliance between House Morcant and the Moon Temple. It was not forgiveness. It was consequence with memory. High Priestess Maevra began writing the first book of the Erased. By spring, it contained more than 4,000 names. Master Halric opened the forbidden infirmary records and trained healers to recognize curse magic without condemning those who carried it. Commander Tereth placed his sword at Elowen's feet and asked judgment for his role in the fall of Ashvale. She did not absolve him. She appointed him guardian of the restored Ashvale lands, where he would spend the remainder of his life rebuilding the villages his soldiers had burned. The old systems did not vanish cleanly. 3 packs rebelled before winter ended. 2 returned after their new leaders discovered freedom, did not protect them from the consequences of cruelty. 1 never returned. The kingdom survived anyway, not unchanged. Changed enough. On the first full moon of spring, every pack gathered in the valley beneath Care Vale. No priest called them to kneel. No blood oath bound their wolves. Ronan stood before them without guard. Elowen stood at his side. Vale emerged first, his black fur crossed with pale scar. Then Elowen shifted. Her red wolf was smaller than his, lean and bright-eyed, thorn-shaped markings winding along her leg. A murmur moved through the valley as the last daughter of Ashvale stood beneath the moon in the form everyone had believed lost. Vale approached. He did not force her head down. He lowered his own. The gesture spread through the valley. Thousands of wolves bowed, not to hidden magic, not to royal command, but in recognition of the woman who had refused to become their prison. Elowen looked toward Ronan after they returned to human form. He stood several paces away, waiting, always waiting now. She crossed the distance. Before the entire kingdom, Elowen took his hand. The mate bond brightened. Not a chain, a vow. Ronan looked at her with the quiet disbelief of a man who had once destroyed the thing he loved to save it and had been given the impossible chance to love differently. I choose you, Elowen said. His breath caught. No prophecy answered. No crown awakened. No wolf was forced to kneel. Ronan lifted her hand to his lips. And I will keep earning that choice, he said, until my final breath. The wolves began to howl. Their voices rose across the valley, over the rebuilt city, through the open palace windows, and into the moonlit halls where chains had once been mistaken for order. Elowen listened with her hand in Ronan. For the first time in her life, the sound did not feel like a kingdom demanding something from her. It sounded like freedom,